Good morning. So we're finally out here doing a garden update. Now it's been a little bit since I've done one of these. It's actually been several months since I've done one of these. So it is definitely way overdue. Now, of course, this is going to be dealing with our current fall garden and what I've got going on here, and unfortunately some of what I don't have going on in here, and kind of the overall what the plan is, not only for our fall garden, but moving forward. So, over the last few weeks, we've started finally getting back into the swing of things. We kind of took a little bit of a hiatus to try to reorganize. And so now we're back in the garden. We've been clearing up garden space, we've been clearing up and cleaning up even the backyard. As I've said before, you should try to make your workspace somewhere you actually want to be. And part of that was getting rid of some of the clutter and cleaning up the area. It was starting to get a little out of control. And of course, the garden space being out of control and getting out of hand has kind of led us to the decisions that we've made for our current garden and may very well kind of be a reoccurring theme moving forward. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Let's get to actually what we've got going on back here at this time after we've gotten everything all cleaned up. And we'll just start right off the bat here, this first row here. And we are doing peas. Now, we've done peas in the past, but not to a great extent. This time I went ahead and did an entire row that is going to be nothing but peas. And we've got two different types. They're both sweet peas. The first one here, these first two bags here, are Sugar Daddy. And as you can see, they're growing quite nicely. Keep in mind, we live in Arizona, and our current garden zone is a 9B. So it doesn't really get cold here, not like below, I think 25 degrees is kind of the average coldest. And so even though we are nearing the middle of November, we're still hitting temperatures during the daytime well into the 80s. Now at night it is dropping down to the 50s. Even had a couple of mornings where it kind of started breaking into the high 40s, but for the most part it's actually still relatively warm. It's a pretty temperate time of year. And that is why I've got peas growing in November, along with lettuce and other items. So these next two are actually sugar snap peas, and again, they're growing quite nicely. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be mulching these today. Same with some of the other stuff I've got going on. Generally, I kind of hold off on the mulching during the sprouting process, just to, one, I can see the progress. I can see if I need to thin anything out. And of course, it just lets the sprouts come through without any additional barriers that may prevent them from growing strong. Now, this next row is actually mostly lettuce, minus the last bag. Normally, we do romaine lettuce. That's what we've had the most success with. I have had some additional leaf lettuce that I've done, like basically a garden salad mix, and it's grown quite well. Now, while we were looking for seeds, we ended up not being able to locate romaine. Now, I could have ordered some, but instead we went with what was available. And so this first one here is just called a bib lettuce. The next one here is called a prize head. Now, I believe this one was considered technically a loose head lettuce. Now, this third container was supposed to be the butter crunch. Now, unfortunately, nothing has sprouted in this. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to try replanting the same type of seeds. It's possible maybe I covered it up too much, or maybe I let it dry out. I'm not sure what happened here. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. It may be a little too late. I don't think so, but we'll see what happens with this. But unfortunately, nothing sprouted here, and I'm not actually sure why. And this last one here is, of course, the Paris Island lettuce. Now that takes care of the lettuce. This last bag here is actually something we've never actually tried before, which is celery. This is called a tall Utah. And so it's barely sprouting here. The celery seems to have a little bit of a longer growing season. I'm actually a little concerned with that because of how late we've got them in. There is a good chance that it may actually get too cold for them to grow, but I wanted to try it anyway. And then we're on to the last row here, which is cauliflower and broccoli. The first two is a snowball cauliflower, and the last two were actually from a packet of seeds that were literally just labeled broccoli. So I don't know what type of broccoli it is. I just know that it's broccoli. And that takes care of all the trellised rows. We still have peppers that are still actually growing. These I will actually be pruning back here soon. The idea behind this is going to be overwintering like I did the serrano. So last year, our serrano pepper plants got obliterated by hornworms. I was able to actually prune them back, I mean, basically down to their, small first little knuckles. And I was concerned I actually pruned them back too far and may have killed them. Instead, they came back with a vengeance, and I've gotten so many peppers this year that it's actually been a little difficult to keep up with. Other than that, we've got a combination of jalapeno, poblano chili, and there is actually a couple of bell peppers in here. Now, unfortunately, I didn't label these all properly, and so obviously the jalapeno versus the chili peppers, easy to tell, but the small poblanos and small bell peppers sometimes kind of look the same, and it's not really until you start biting into them that we find out, oh no, this one's got a little kick to it. All of these though are still producing peppers, and so we're letting them continue just a little bit longer here. But as you can see, they're starting to kind of fall over. They're not as green as they normally are. They're not as green as usual. They're starting to yellow a bit, and I think it's just finally starting to get a little too cold for them, especially late at night / early in the morning. So I'm going to be cutting these back. Now, a lot of people overwinter their peppers by actually, cutting them down to the first, basically, Y. So you have your main stem, and then you get your first Ys where it starts to branch off into, your actual branches. I cut them down like that, but what I don't do or didn't do last year, and I'm not doing this year, is to pull them actually out of the pots, rinse the roots off, and repot them and bring them indoors. Now, the reason I'm not doing that here is, as I've stated before, it's a zone 9B. And while, yes, frost is a threat, it is something that can happen here, and it happens, more often than you might think. It's frost, we generally don't have freezing though. And so I believe, once again, just like with last year, I think the pepper plants will be just fine as long as we keep them adequately fed and watered. And if there is a threat of frost, we will just cover them. That's what we did this last year. And then we move on to the final thing, which is the garlic. So we have these two 100-gallon bags. These are pretty shallow bags. We thought we might have actually had enough garlic to plant both bags. Unfortunately, we just had just enough to plant the one. So we went ahead and just planted the one. It's all mulched right now. And of course, these won't be harvested until next year. So we won't see any growth on those for some time, I believe. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot going on back here. And this is kind of the new theme. So earlier in the year, we had a ton of tomato plants, and I had other stuff growing, but the main focus was tomatoes. And so what I want to do moving forward is actually have a more focused garden. Now, we're just getting back into the swings, and this is not planned out near as well as I would have liked it to have been. But the idea is still there, where we will actually kind of reduce the amount that we're growing so that we can focus on growing specific items. For example, I've got this entire row of peas. I've got mostly a row that is mostly lettuce, and then of course I've got my broccoli and cauliflower. And so being able to kind of reduce it down, I think it's going to make it a little more manageable, considering we all still work full-time jobs here and I can't be in the garden every single day. That was actually part of the problem with the tomatoes last year. They started to get overgrown, they were out of control, I wasn't keeping up on the pruning, and it became a bit of a nightmare almost. The other side is I had so much tomatoes. It was, I jumped the gun a bit, and unfortunately, a lot of that went to waste. Not all of it, but some of it went to waste, and it was because I wasn't able to actually address preserving and utilizing the tomatoes properly. It was just too much, too fast. Now, that being said, I do believe I can grow the same amount this next time, knowing what's going to be required of us to tackle something like that. But otherwise, we're actually going to be pulling this back a bit. That being said, that also means I have a whole lot of unused containers, which I actually am going to have another video addressing that and what I believe you should do as far as handling containers that are currently not being used. Now, I can tell you, just kind of a sneak peek or a bit of a spoiler, uh, don't skip watering. That's all I'm going to say. You'll have to check out that other video. We'll go from there. And there you have it. That's our current garden update. We, of course, are kind of downsizing it a bit, making it more manageable, and allowing us to focus on, individualized crops, if you will. So and we're going to kind of keep that theme moving forward. Otherwise, again, thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.